Good. Yeah, bug-eyed, Will. Bug-eyed. Okay,
Yeah, well,
3, 2, 1.
I just crushed some espresso, so I'm
Did
ready.
you?
Oh yeah. In my dirty coffee mug that you always complain about.
Oh my God, that is so gross.
Well, the espresso stains it, but not these beautiful teeth.
In 3, in 2, in 1.
Welcome to an all-new episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. This podcast explores leadership traits under stress with a special guest each week. We use a simple and accurate OAD assessment to identify key personality traits or superpowers, as well as the shadow side, kryptonite traits that appear when we're under stress. As always, we'll have some pod banter, shameless plugging, and we'll even let our guests talk for a bit. Of course, no humble brags. Welcome to the show.
Welcome, everybody, to a brand new live edition of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield.
Yes.
Welcome to the pod, everybody. We have a special guest. We'll get to that. First, banter.
Good.
You got anything? Or are you unprepared?
I didn't know I was supposed to be prepared. I'm prepared to be hilarious.
All right. Well, we'll see. Okay. Well, I have a couple of things. One is the new OAD platform launched.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's right.
So, and by the time this airs, all the bugs should be out, and I should be able to log in.
You think it's just bugs why you can't log in, or you think
I
there's
don't
something
know.
else going
It's
on?
a whole different. They switched over from username to email, and I don't know that they figured out how to map multiple emails to or one email to multiple accounts. But it's like I used to tell my dad about my old Volvo. Once it starts, it's great.
Just got to get it started.
You can't always get it to start. I did learn how to roll start and pop the clutch, which is a trait that everybody in 2023 should know how to do.
Was your first car a Volvo?
Yes.
A Volvo what? What was the model?
Oh my goodness. This I was talking about my first car was a Volvo. It was in 1984 and it was a 1973 blue DL wagon.
So, fun fact, weird, my first car,
yes,
Volvo, inherited it from my mother.
Of course.
It was a 240 GL. It was one that looked like a rectangle.
Yes.
Exactly like 1986. And it was blue, and the air conditioning didn't work. So it was windows down, baby, in the summer. And I drove that thing till I destroyed the transmission. I think I had 200 and some odd thousand miles on that.
Yeah,
first car Volvo. That's weird that we both had a Volvo as a first. Mine was automatic though.
Yeah, and this is another cut I can do for Tom. We bragged about the internet last episode, but he drove the car from Staten Island to Fuqua, where he went to school at Duke, which must have been a horrible drive because there was also no AC. And then he didn't change the oil for 2 years. And like graduation week, like the thing was videotaped smoking its way down like Chapel Hill Road in Durham.
It probably had no oil left.
Yeah. Anyway.
Vinay, first car.
Yeah, why not?
1978 Honda Accord.
In what year?
When did I start driving? I started driving in 1988.
So it's a 10-year-old car.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And 10 years old back then was a really old car.
Well, it was a very old car, exactly. But Honda's like, sponsor opportunity. Buy an old Honda.
Yeah.
Work in progress. Love it. All right. So I just want to tell you that, back to the new OAD. Once the new OAD is out and fully rolled out, guess what happens, Will?
Does it have anything to do with Volvos?
No.
Oh.
SBR project, next on the list.
Oh, that's right. The white paper.
The white paper and also the fit gap. Cannot wait. And then, Vinay, I just want to tell you that your marketing team and the amount of prep that they did with us in anticipation of supporting this podcast has been phenomenal. It's like
a great crew.
As much as we've had from the first 33 episodes, they've done for the 34th. Now that may be. Am I recording? That may be more around how little prep we did for the first 33, but still, it is impressive.
Well, I do zero prep.
Exactly. So I'm John Lane.
I'm Will Barfield.
And besides doing zero prep, we are a work in progress. We have a special guest today, Vinay. Introduce yourself, sir, and welcome.
All about you.
Sure.
Go back to grade, though.
I won't, but I will tell you that I'll start in high school. That's when I started my first company. Sold $21,000 by myself, my first company, and I was bitten by the entrepreneurial bug. So I am now on company number 6. I love starting companies, and the most difficult thing that I think I've ever found is, so my background is in artificial intelligence, machine learning, math, computer science, all that propeller head, boring stuff. And the hardest problems to solve are around people. So that's what I've built now. My 6th company is a problem-solving company. The what, there's the why, there's the what, and there's the how. A lot of people focus on why and the how. We focus on solving what is the problem, just using data and analytics. And it helps solve problems between leaders and their people. It's fabulous. I love it.
That is awesome. So great.
Well done. And that was nice and succinct, covered a lot, covered it efficiently. That makes the producer so very happy.
So very happy. And our producer can get cranky.
He does. And when he starts moving back and forth, Vinay, you know that it's time to move on, or he's
I'm the producer if you didn't know. So I'm chief cook and
I had a 50-50 shot there. So
there you go.
Crushed it.
All right. So let's get into it. Mm-hmm. So one of the thing we do every week is we talk about leadership traits under stress. We get letters, lots of letters, and they say, where do you get your leadership traits from? So I respond, we get them from our OAD assessment, which we talk about here. It's a 5-minute assessment to complete, very quick, very easy, super accurate. And then from there, we get outputs. We share those outputs with our guests, and then they comment, and we have a nice conversation. And we're off and running. So let us begin. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning of each episode, we talk about the now infamous OAD leadership style matrix made better by the Purple Arrow. And in OAD land, there's really 2 cuts. There's generalist and specialist, and socially oriented and technically oriented. And that is how we sum it up. And so I am a socially oriented generalist in the builder quadrant, and I am a negotiator. Will is a technically oriented generalist in the architect box. He's a developer. And ding, ding, Vinay is also a builder. We'll get to that.
Another one.
We've had more builders on. It kind of makes sense, though, because you ask an expert to come on, and they're maybe not as inclined. You ask a builder to incline to come on and say, I'll bring my own mic. And so, it's maybe to be expected. Exactly. So
I kind of thought he might land an expert just because he's so data and analytics focused, but he's also a 6-time entrepreneur. So builder ultimately is probably where we're going. Yeah. Here's the question. This is where I get to say some more things. Vinay, how do you feel about having your personality and style and traits broken down into a 2-dimensional data table?
I love it. And the reason I love it is because I am on this fabulous journey of self-discovery. Every day I learn more about myself, and having it instead of taking a year to understand a bunch of stuff, I get to look at a piece of paper that shows me what it is. That helps me take a huge leap forward in a couple of seconds. I love it.
Awesome.
Well, I can't wait to talk about this table, because I love it when we see someone that says variation. So John, enlighten us, and thank you for that beautiful answer.
I will. So just a quick reminder, the way the OAD leadership matrix works is we look at these 4 traits here, and we put them in relative order. So we look at the A in relationship to the D. If the A is greater, meaning to the right, you're a generalist. Then we look at the E versus the D. If it's greater, you're more socially oriented. So like me, you are a socially oriented builder. Now it's a variation for a couple of reasons. One reason is your A is usually in a generic builder, let's say, the A is usually to the right and a dominant trait.
Over the
Here it is slightly subordinate to these. It's still a dominant trait. The reason for that, I know, Will, you're going to say this, but I'll jump ahead of you.
Do it.
Is that Vinay's patience, unlike most builders and specifically negotiators, is a dominant trait. It's stacked up here, where usually the patience is down here. And so we'll get into that in a little bit, but that makes it a variation. And so oftentimes upper right traits, typical traits, are all considered to be high urgency, high comfortable change, thus lower P. And Vinay does not have that, but he does have the AD-ED relationship. And so what's going to happen, Will, when you get into the generic traits in a moment, some of them may not actually apply to Vinay because those are generic, and the system will actually put out ones that work for him. So that's the breakdown, and let's get into it.
Got it. And do I get to touch the purple pointy thing?
Oh, yes, touch it.
So, Vinay, the interesting thing with the purple thing is that John has been complaining for a long time to the wonderful people at is the software that we're using for this podcast, that there's no pointer. All right, there's no pointer so that he can point to things in the midst of the podcast. And so as a patch, they created in the short term this little purple doodad that can be moved around. But it gets hung up sometimes in the slides, and it's not the cleanest, but it's better. And it has reduced his amount of complaining to a certain degree. So as John mentioned, someone who takes the OAD assessment, lands upper right, builder negotiator profile, is going to see these generic superpowers. All of them are going to see these generic superpowers. So we're only going to really drill in shallow here. Is there one of these, Vinay, that stands out to you as really accurate, or I notice that about myself, or others notice that about me?
If I were to rank these in order, I'd probably put optimistic demeanor as my highest, as the one that most resonates, most closely to 100% resonates with me. Does that make sense?
It does. And just real quick commentary on that. Why?
Ooh.
I like to always keep looking forward. I'm always, when people talk about predictive analytics, I've been doing that my whole life, just sort of up in my head. And if you can be scared about the future, or you can be happy about it. That's the choice.
It's a choice. It's still coming.
Yeah, that's right. I'm happy about it. That's what it is. There's no point in being sad.
Well, let me go back, Will, for a second and just say,
do it.
If I can grab the pointer, which I can't, but I can move. Yeah, this is what Will talked about. If everybody can see and imagine his E versus his D, that is not thank you. That is not a variation. That's clean. And so E greater than D is socially oriented, but that means things like open and warm and optimistic personality. And so that's not on the variation side. And that is the longest spread, the longest relative spread on the chart. So it's interesting that you feel that, and the data supports it. So win-win.
Yeah, and someone who started 6 companies, and the first one was in high school. If you're not optimistic and forward thinking, you simply those things aren't going to happen.
Agreed.
So great call out there. Same thing. All right, superpowers. Now we're going over to the kryptonite. Stress, difficult times, challenging situations, what have you. One of these. Which one of these would you double click on that either you feel or others point out to you in challenging moments?
I would say it might be. I feel like I've turned this into my strength as I've started to learn myself. So, but it's can become too concerned with pleasing others and may overcommit at times. I don't know. I don't someone told me this thing once before, that there's no expenses in business, only investments. And I don't see people as expenses in my company. I see them only as investments. So I invest heavily in them. And some people might think and say, why are you spending so much time? And that could be a lost cause. I don't ever actually end up seeing that. I usually it may take a little bit longer time to get prime in the pump, but at some point in time, the pump starts coming. I don't have to pump the handle anymore. It just starts coming by itself. So I think people could easily see that as that number 3 as my kryptonite.
Yeah, we've had these conversations with so many builders, and many of them, John, picked that one. And really, it is because you're extroverted, you're outgoing, and you saying yes feels good. And sometimes you say yes to too many things and end up overcommitting. And so finding that balance where you don't end up in that pickle is can be a really significant entrepreneurial trap.
Let me add, Amber, I think, talked about this, and one of our previous guests anyway, and just said that she has spent years working to take that sort of the natural place and to learn how to be comfortable with not jumping to yes and overcommitting. So I suspect someone like Vinay has built mental and or other systems to protect that downside. All right, Will.
John,
yes, sir.
Great point. Would you say that his ability to do that maybe better than someone like Amber or others has to do with that variation piece and the P?
I think possibly the P means a couple of things. The relatively higher P is, unlike other builders, Vinay has more patience, slightly less urgency, or doesn't work with that urgency, and maybe is more inclined to systems. So he may have figured this out earlier than other builders did in their
Got it. Yeah, agreed. We're actually, instead of just talking about you, we're going to continue talking to you, Vinay.
Yes.
Hi. So look at John snuggling. So he is a big teddy bear, aren't you?
He is.
So leadership superpowers. You looked at your results. You spent some time homework in thinking about this, and then you picked these bullet points and scribed to this stuff. So talk me through these, please. And be aware that I may interject at some point with an incisive, brilliant question, or it may not be brilliant. No promises.
So if I could draw a through line between these 3 things, right? I'm constantly seeing opportunities in the future that I don't know that others have had maybe the luxury or the dearth of seeing, depending on their point of view, right? I'm optimistic about it. And there are big problems. I don't like solving small problems. I love solving massive problems, kind of shift the earth kind of problems. And in order for me to be able to get there, I've got to start talking to people about a bridge to a future that doesn't exist. They may not understand. There's no evidence of it. There's no past history. So I've got to invite them into a future that is highly contextualized for each individual, because they've got to buy in. So I don't make just one type of Kool-Aid. I make 38,000 different types of Kool-Aid, and each one is suited to the person who's going to drink it. Right? Because if I gave them the Kool-Aid that they want, and that's probably not the best analogy in the world, the whole Jim Jones kind of thing, but the point is that if I get them to a point where they see how that future is in their best interest, and they kind of get bought in, start drinking the Kool-Aid, if you will, I get to build, right? I get to build because I don't like a lot of detail. I hand it off to them and say, hey, this is yours now. This is your baby. They take care of it. I go on to build the next thing.
Yeah, and that, John, that's that D. That the detail orientation, delegation comfort.
Builders are famous for 0 to 1, maybe 1 to 2, but 3 forward, that's somebody else's job. Yeah, for sure.
Before we leave this slide, John, with that desire to build, that new systems thing, that intuition about the future, that creator mentality, Vinay, do you find that superpower, or those collection of superpowers that you said we can kind of pull together with one thread, Do you find that you can manage a greater volume of things all at one time than others can? Can you have just more plates spinning than many people that you encounter without any of them falling, dropping, shattering? How do you do that? Because it seems to me that you're voracious about opportunity and creation and consumption, but do you find that you can do that without losing track?
So I'm going to tell you. I'll just tell you a quick story here, and the punchline is it seems completely counterintuitive. I am actually incredibly laser focused. So one person asked me one time, Vinay, you're kind of all over the place. You're talking about all these different things. And when he asked me this question, he said, "Has anybody ever told you that before?" I looked at him and said, it took about 45 seconds to collect a response to him. I said, "So look, if I'm climbing to the top of Mount Everest and I go 200 yards to the right or to the left, someone says, 'Hey, you're veering off the path.' But if I'm going to 35,000 feet, am I really veering off the path because I'm trying to get around the trees?" So for me, I see so many things that are coming at me at a regular interval. It is actually very easy for me to say, I don't want to do that, or it incorporates into my path to the top. And it's okay for me, or it's not. I actually think I've just gotten even better at it over time, just at quickly assimilating information and saying, yeah, that's not helpful to me, move on. And that's kind of my ability to assimilate things very quickly. Once I incorporate how it's going to help me get to the top of that, Mount Everest, boom, let's start moving on, or let's leave it behind. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
There's no wrong answer. You just, we just talk about getting to the top, and like you said, maybe someone says, "Where are you going?" and you say, "Well, I'm going around those trees," and you can see a solution they can't see.
Yeah, that's often usually how it feels.
And when you see the A and the D so far apart, that not like A greater than D puts you in the right upper as a generalist, but the length between it is a measure of intensity. So one of the things I'll call out is that generalists typically are comfortable with ambiguity. Your widespread says that you're very comfortable with ambiguity, and therefore you don't need a structured environment to see where you're trying to get to. All right, too many compliments. Let's get into the good stuff.
Yep. So only insults on this slide. Kryptonite, right? So for all the things that make founders and leaders and entrepreneurs, excellent recognition of superpowers. Not everything is roses and unicorns and bunny rabbits. We can't all be John Lane. When the stress is on, you face a challenge. Maybe you, for whatever reason, can't see that path around the trees to the top. Like how you pick these things out and wrote some notes on them too. Walk us through the shadow side. Hi, Sarah Glover. The inversion, superpowers, strengths become kryptonite and weakness.
Yeah. So my ability to move fast is a blessing and a curse, right? If I can quickly discern as something as being utilitarian for me, I get it. I can say, all right, let's put that on the path or leave it behind. What happens if I can't make hay and I can't understand it? It just sort of becomes sort of like this little swirling vortex until I can, and that sort of becomes a problem because I can't just leave it either, right? It just almost starts to become a little all-consuming, if you will. And part of the problem with that is that I can spend an inordinate amount of cycles, sort of emotionally and mentally, on trying to understand the problem. Now, I will tell you, as I've gotten older, I'm starting to learn more about myself. Now I more quickly realize that I'm getting stuck on something. I'll pick up the phone and call 20 people and say, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And usually by the end of that day, I've moved forward. I'll tell you, 15 years ago, that could take 6 months. So the kryptonite is that, and I think that's part of what the utility of this is. It's almost, if I'd seen this 15 years ago, it would have been nice. I could have gotten here 15 years faster, right? But it's just this idea that I could see things about myself and kind of sort of my natural tendencies in terms of where I get stuck in the muck, if you will.
Yeah, that's great because the things I see here, right, board in detail. Once I understand something, learning at a blistering pace, once you get it, you're ready to move on. When you are, leading others, or managing an org, or you're just working with, teammates or business partners or consultants who don't work the same way, it can be challenging when you're ready to move and you feel this drag, right? You're like, where is this resistance coming from? And it's because the people that you are depending on didn't move on yet. And how do you balance that when you're ready to accelerate, and the rest of your band of brothers, right? The crew is not meeting that pace.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so I think the one thing I heard there is that sort of my patience quotient is on the higher side, right? I actually don't usually have a lot of problems with people slowing me down. I'm actually okay with going at their pace once I've understood it and sort of incorporated it into my my thought process. That's fine. I'll take all the time in the world to show others how to get there as well, if they're so inclined. But where it becomes a problem is where I just can't. It's a pill too large for me to swallow, or I just don't understand how to swallow it, and I get stuck. And it's like, I'm running at the front of the pack. I'm running as fast as I can. My shoe gets stuck in the mud, and I can't pull my foot out of the mud. And everyone's like, "Well, why are we stopped, Vinay?" And I'm kind of looking around at everyone, going, "I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. Why can't I move?" And it takes a little while for everyone to say, "Vinay, just pull your foot out of the mud." I was like, "Oh, that's what it was." So
there's something in your profile that I saw, that there's a high level of persistence, which is good for problem solving. But when does persistence end and stubbornness and heel digging in occur? Nobody knows. If it's probably different, but it sounds like you've been able to at least find that line now and not take 15 years to figure something out. But
well, yeah, and there have been many dark nights of the soul getting there, I'm sure. It's almost, this two-dimensional representation of myself would have helped me incorporate that into my thinking, my behavior patterns.
Will and I will work on a time machine. We might have a couple of things to do before we get your
and the purple pointer.
Yeah, of course.
We will probably we would invent a time machine, I believe, before John gets a real pointer on. What do you think?
Well, you know what I want to do, right?
You want to segue, and I do too. So, Vinay, you brought up the 15 years piece. You're a data and analytics guy. You are no stranger to assessments and tools and these kinds of vehicles. You're not. We knew that going in. That's one of the reasons we wanted you on the show, among others. You've certainly raised the bar of professionalism here by several degrees just by being present, at least with me. But you took the assessment, you looked at the results, you studied it, right? You said, I love it. And I don't mean the tool necessarily, I mean the data and the readout and the information that you gained from it. How do you take what you've gathered in this exercise with us, the assessment, the follow-up with John, the show build, and then this conversation today? How do you use that going forward, where there's some things in there you're like, I knew that. There's some things in there like, wow, I haven't seen that called out in a while, or that's a problem I've been working on. I'm glad this helped. Was this enlightening in a way? And how can you use what you gathered today to help you get even better?
Well, so it's a interesting question, just because, I mean, it's almost exactly what I do in just kind of a whole different dimension, right? And I kind of do it for companies as opposed to individuals. We always say, it's what is the problem? Well, it's not so much as a problem. It's really more of what are you right now? If you can identify, you have that awareness of what you are right now, then you can start to operate from there. Seeing, instead of me thinking my patient, Albert Einstein said, if you teach a fish that the only way it can be successful is by climbing trees, it'll always consider itself a failure. My high P, right, having that high level of patience, if I treat that as a boat anchor, well, I'm just going to suffer throughout the course of my life, right? As opposed to leaning into it and saying, oh, my patience is part of my superpower. Let me lean into that. So being able to see it articulated in two dimensions, kind of where those things are, I think that's going to significantly influence the way I kind of think every problem I come across in the future. That question that you asked, John, about stubbornness versus persistence, right? Am I in a stubborn cycle or am I in a persistent cycle? Am I being too patient in a situation? Is this the right level of patience, right? Does that make some sense what I'm saying there?
Yeah. Love
I think it covers a lot of how I will kind of think about things moving forward.
Will,
Yes.
we're coming to the end of the show. I'm so sad.
Me too. It's been a great show. It went
Very
really
great.
fast. Thank you, Vinay.
Very great.
Sure.
I'm John Lane.
And I'm Will Barfield.
And we are a work in progress. Great show.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Mom.
Work in Progress is a podcast presentation of Slipshod Productions. Available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Executive produced and starring John Lane and Will Barfield. Talent booking, production, and editing by John Lane. Thanks for watching. See you next week.